Today we're gonna make cassoulet. Cassoulet is a rich, decadent, wintry dish, and we've opened up a bottle of our Baker Lane Syrah, and this wine will bring good texture and acidity and peppery flavor to really cut through the decadence and fatty cassoulet. So to make the cassoulet, we're going to cook some butter beans, braise some pork, and make décolleté confit. So the first thing we're gonna do is cook our beans. I soaked these butter beans yesterday, and now I'm gonna cook them with a piece of pancetta. So cassoulet has a lot of different meat in it. It has pancetta, sausage, décolleté confit, and pork. So we'll just keep these at a low simmer until the beans are cooked. Okay, now we can make our décolleté confit. To confit something means you're just cooking it in fat. So we have these 4 duck legs here from Liberty Farm here in Sonoma. I've cleaned them up a little bit and scored the ankle bone. And then I seasoned them yesterday. You want to do this a day in advance with salt, pepper, allspice, and thyme. So now we're gonna cover these in duck fat and throw them in a 300-degree oven and cook them until they're totally tender, and it'll probably take an hour and a half, 2 hours. Our last component is our pork. So we're going to brown the pork, and then we're also going to saute some diced onion, celery root, garlic, and then add in some thyme, tomato, and chicken stock. Okay, so to brown the meat, we're just gonna warm up a pan with some duck fat. So once the fat is nice and hot, you can add the pork. Now I'm gonna get some garlic ready. I'll probably chop up like five big cloves. Kind of like to use a lot of garlic for this. The meat is smelling, you can smell that it's getting nice and toasty, so let's go check on it. I'm gonna flip these over. We have a good caramelization. And just brown the other side. And also pick and chop some thyme to add to our onions. All right, I'm gonna pull this pork out, and then we can add this celery root and onions to all this duck fat. I'm gonna add the garlic and that thyme. Now I'm gonna add about a cup of pureed tomato and cook that down a little bit, and then a half a cup of white wine. A bay leaf, and then we can add all the pork back in. Now we'll pour some chicken stock over this to cover, and then throw it into the oven to braise until the pork's totally tender. And that'll take a couple hours. Okay, we can check our beans. They look good. Yum. Perfect. So now I'm gonna remove this pancetta and dice it up. So this I'm just gonna slice up and then cook it in a cast iron so it gets a little crispy. I like when there's like a little bit of texture with the pancetta, and it'll help to render out some of this fat. Okay, we'll do a quick recap. Our beans are ready. Our pork is in the oven and cooking, and our duck is in the oven and confit. So when the time comes, we're gonna combine them all in a little cazuela and throw them in the oven. The last element for the cassoulet is the breadcrumbs, so we can toast those off in the oven right now too. So much good pork fat in there. This is some levain that I peeled with a bread knife and blended up in a Cuisinart. So we'll just toss this with a little bit of olive oil. So we're gonna toast these in the oven until they're golden brown. And then once we're making our cassoulet, we're gonna sprinkle some on top. And so the breadcrumbs will absorb some of that fatty flavor, but also get really crunchy and give a nice texture. Okay, we can check our duck. It's been about 2 hours. It smells so good. I think these are about done. To check if the duck is done, you just want to kind of bend the joint, and if that is moving, see how flexible that is? That means it's fully cooked. So good. Duck leg confit is just like one of the most delicious, decadent things. So we'll set these aside and get everything else ready. Now we can clean some beautiful chicories Steven just harvested from the garden this morning. I mean, look at that. It's so amazing. Okay, now we can check our pork. It smells delish. Yum. Looking pretty good. It's starting to fall apart a little bit, but still holding its shape. Now I'm just gonna taste this broth for seasoning, because we're gonna basically just add our beans and everything to this. So this is the base of the cassoulet. It's good. I could use maybe a hint of salt, but we're gonna add the duck in there and that's gonna bring some salinity. So I'm gonna leave that as is. Now we can build our cassoulet. So I'm gonna bring everything over to the island. So first I'm gonna break this pork down a little bit into smaller chunks. Now we'll scoop out the beans. We're gonna hold back on the bean liquid. We're not gonna add any. Well, we can add some in later if it gets too dry, but we have a good amount of stock here from the braised pork. So now we can just incorporate the beans and the pork, and then we can't forget our pancetta. Yum! And this is really a dish that gets better the more time it has to sit with itself, you know? All the flavors become friends. Yeah. Okay, now I'm gonna pour this in the cast iron and hope for the best. Fits perfectly. Okay, we'll set this aside, and then last thing I'm gonna do is cut the duck confit, and we'll sort of nestle that in here with the beans. So I'm just gonna cut the leg into 2 pieces here through the joint, and then we'll just nestle these in here, skin side up. Now we're gonna get this into a 350-degree oven and cook it for about an hour, I'd say. We'll see. And then we're gonna top it with some sausage that we're gonna brown off, some of the breadcrumbs, and let it cook for another half an hour. It's huge! The sausages are like par cooked, so they'll finish cooking in here. So the cassoulet is ready, and the last thing we need to do is top it with breadcrumbs. Now we're gonna throw this back in the oven for another 30 minutes or so. All right, let's check in on it. It's glorious and huge. This looks delicious. The bread's kind of absorbed a bit of the juice, but it's still really crunchy on top. And our duck skin is crunchy. It's so beautiful. It's a solid like 20 pounds of food, but I have some mustard greens here. We can scatter that on top. Okay, now I'm gonna serve it up. I like how the bread has created a little crust on top, the breadcrumbs. Get some of these chicories. This like really rich, fatty dish wants like a bright, acidic, mustardy salad. It's so comforting, so delicious. It's really earthy, but then you get like this sweet, fatty duck. I need to get some duck skin. This meal after like a long day, so warming.